Welcome to Salon Talks. I'm Mary Elizabeth Williams, and this guy is Tom Papa. You know him. He's a comedian. He's a podcaster. He's a radio host, which is different from being a podcaster. He is an actor. He's an author. He's a bread baker. You know him from his numerous comedy specials, his multiple books, all of the millions of things you do all the time, and from the delicious bread you make for your friends and family, I guess. I want to get in on that. But his new book out just in time, it's called We're All in This Together. So make some room.
Make some room.
Make some room.
Yeah.
When you came up with the title for this, were you thinking about High School Musical? I need to know.
I wasn't, but now that you mention it, maybe subconsciously, we are always thinking about that. So it probably leaked.
It's just an undercurrent. It's
Yeah.
the hum you don't hear, but you know that it's there the whole
Right.
time.
I thought I was being original, but I
And you're
wasn't.
like, wait a minute. Then
Yeah.
suddenly you're like, Wildcats
Yeah.
in the house. Yeah.
For those years when my daughters were watching it in a loop.
In a nonstop loop. And when they weren't watching it, they were just listening to the soundtrack because we have daughters the same age. So
Yeah.
I'm completely in that. Tell me about you've written numerous books before. This one, like others, it's a collection of essays, reminiscences, philosophy, advice. What did you want the story of this particular one to be at this particular time in our collective lives?
Yeah, I started to get tired of the narrative that we're all apart and that we're at each other's throats. And I don't find that when I'm traveling around. I think people, for the most part, are just trying to get along. And I think I don't like cynicism. I like hope. And I just wanted to convey what I saw, which wasn't even just politically that we're not at each other's throats, but just as human beings, we all really need each other all the time. Like, I don't succeed on my side of the street if you fail across the street. And the more I started diving into it and writing about it and exploring it, I just started to realize we are literally dependent on each other, and everybody that came before us, whether you like them or not, they've all informed your life. And I started to get like this kind of calm feeling. Like I'm not the first person to go through all of this. There's been millions of people have tried this, have done it, have learned how to order in restaurants, have learned how to get rid of poison ivy. They've all done it. So why not pay attention to that? And that's what this book is. It's just kind of funny essays about other humans' experiences, because we're all living from the same brochure. So learn from that, and just your life will be easier. All it took was going through CVS one day, and I just saw all of these things that are wrong with people and all of these solutions that are waiting. And you're going to run into one of those. You're going to have to go down every one of those aisles eventually. Like now, like I'm, buying something for a rash, and there's like that weird section that has like medical equipment, like for bigger toilets and handles and it's like, I'm not dealing with that today, but eventually,
not yet.
Eventually, I'm gonna want one of those.
And it's good to know where to find it. Because I was out of town recently, and I needed to go to the CVS, and I was like, where do I find the thing for my thing?
For your thing.
But you know that it's there.
And you know that's there because other people have had the thing.
They have.
Yeah.
They've had, even in a distant city, they've had the same thing. Exactly. I love very early on in the book, you quote your grandmother, and it's one of the big takeaways from this book is that there's no such thing as normal. Mm-hmm. We're all messed up. Yeah. Obviously, Tom, some of us are more messed up than others.
Sure.
It's a spectrum, right?
Yeah, of course.
But we are all messed up. Why did you want that to be one of the central messages of this? Because we do all feel alone in our messiness.
Yeah, I think you have to cut yourself some slack. Like, we're all working very hard. We're all doing the best that we can. And you start to feel like you're not doing enough, or you're failing, or that you are a mess, and that other people are succeeding much more than you are. They're not. Nobody is. Everybody is dealing with stuff. Everybody is a mess. The most idyllic people that you see on social media, you think that their lives are buttoned down. They're not. They're not. They also have to deal with problems. So I started when I was touring. I used to tell people, you're doing great. You're actually doing great. And people were coming up to me after the shows and thanking me. They were like, thank you for saying that. I just did, because nobody says it. Your family doesn't say. Your family never says, hey, thanks, Mom. Thanks for all that stuff that you do. And they have no idea that without you, they'd be dead. Like literally dead. If I left my daughters with a can and a can opener and came back 24 hours later, they'd be dead. But do they thank you for that? No. So you need a stranger to say it.
Right.
Or a comedian.
Right. And nor should they, right? Like that's the other thing is like I don't know if my kids should say that. I want them to be able to take it for granted that we're going to keep them alive, because I did not grow up with that kind of expectation for sure that like I was going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
You had a pretty hands-off kind of a childhood. You were more of a fend for yourself kind of a person too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. But what are you saying we gave too much? So
no, just that like I can get my validation from someone else, from you.
Right. Yeah, you can. But, a nice card once in a while. Do the things. Again, it's like with the book. It's like people figured this stuff out. There's a reason there's a holiday. There's a reason that you have cards. There's a reason that there's thank you notes.
And
do those things and it'll be enough.
And you do talk about one of your peeves, which is rudeness.
Yeah.
Which I love. Like that I agree. Like I don't know if I need my kids to thank me every day, but I won't accept them being rude. Like I don't accept rudeness. And I love you talk in the book about when people now just say, appreciate you.
Yeah. Appreciate you.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. It became very popular.
Because I don't think they do.
No. It works though. When they first show up, when the phrases first show up, you're like, oh, that's nice. No one said appreciate me. But now it's been overused, and now you're like, no, you don't.
And you've been traveling around, so you're dealing with humans. You call yourself someone who is an optimist, someone who you straight up say, I love people in this book. You say, I love people. And yet, you also have to deal with rude people every step of the way. How do you separate those two things so that you don't become cynical, so that you don't become tired and you don't become cranky? You don't seem cranky at all.
I get cranky. If I get tired, I get cranky. But I do love people, and I try to cut them slack when I'm out. When I was younger, I had less patience. I was more aggravated traveling, and if people were rude but now I just realize they're just bumbling around. They can't see. This is their first time in the airport all year. You just gotta if you have a little bit of a sense of humor about it, you can cut them some slack. It doesn't mean I'm in this blissful state of loving them all. There are sometimes you want to strangle somebody, especially if they're being overtly rude. I was just on the flight yesterday, and there was this guy who was, we're all waiting, everyone's just waiting, and there's going to be a pre-board, there's going to be 50 people that do that, and this one guy was just like a fly, like a house fly. He was going to board before everybody, and he just kept trying, and everyone's looking at him, and he's violating the social contract of all of us, and he's trying to jump the line. And you can feel everybody getting aggravated. And even now I'm trying to cut people slack. I'm watching him and I'm like, I hope he doesn't make it. I really hope he doesn't make it. And they finally got past the pre-boards, which he tried. And then he tried to jump and they turned him back. And he had to go back through the crowd. It was so satisfying.
I bet.
It felt so good. It was a little triumph.
I bet that like the whole group just felt a collective, like that's a we're all in this together. And sometimes we're all in this together is we hate that guy.
Yeah, we're all in this together as we
against him.
Get that guy.
Get that guy to the back of the line. And you said something really important about like having a sense of humor, because you talk in the book about how it's a bit of a red flag when people who don't laugh. And you've been around people who don't laugh.
Yeah.
Obviously you're a comedian. It's your life's work. It's your bread and butter. But also, why is that something that sends up a flare when you see people who just don't have that in them?
It terrifies me.
Right? They're the scariest people in the world.
Really scary. I mean, before I was a comedian as a kid, if I would see people that didn't laugh or teachers that never laughed. It's like something's wrong here. Something's right now with my kids. Like we'll meet these other parents, you know, like you meet other parents through your children, and you realize that husband doesn't laugh, that wife never laughs. What's it like living in there? What is, like, there's no release valve. You're either taking everything too seriously. I mean, it's got to be a pressure cooker. It makes me very, very uncomfortable.
Right. What do you do with the bad stuff in your life if you can't make a joke out of it?
Yeah, I don't understand that way of living. So you just brood over it and have real, like, honest conversations every night?
Ooh, yikes. No, thank you. And in that same chapter, though, you talk about, you know, the comedies that you and I grew up on together. And I really appreciate that you talk about the McCarthyism of the left, because I think those of us who consider ourselves progressive don't always hold ourselves accountable to what it means to be progressive, what it means to be tolerant, what it means to believe in freedom of speech.
Yeah. It's a terrifying moment.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think it's really exemplified by the book banning. I think that's like the culmination of it. Watching that there's people from the far right and left, both banning books, banning these very, like that we're at that moment is really frightening, and it's a real alarm that we've gone too far and you're not allowing people to live. And you know, the left was always about freedom and of ideas and expression of that, and that's clamped down now, and you're not letting people speak, and you're really, and then the right is just like you're taking all these groups of young people who just want to see themselves represented or just kind of find their way, and you have a little book, you know, it's insane. I was listening to someone who was saying, you know, she was a librarian. She was talking about how they wanted to ban this book about, it had something about a gay teenager. And she said, people act like this is like being held up and like marched around and trying to change people. She said, this is a book that sits on a shelf, and one little kid has this bravery because he's alone and he's trying to figure out his life, and he gets the courage to go and find that book in that library and do this brave thing of checking and making eye contact with the librarian and just going off by themselves and finding comfort and some kind of lesson from it. And that you're taking that away is really, really terrifying. You know, it's upsetting. And it's upsetting that it's both sides have gotten so.
Well, I want to ask you about that because I feel like when you want to see an example of that kind of, as you call it, McCarthyism of the left, it often comes down to comedy. That is where you are on the front lines in terms of these challenges to what you can and cannot say and what's okay and what's not okay.
Yeah.
What are you experiencing as a comic or in the comedy world about that kind of pressure to not offend?
Well, it's look, if you're a comedian and you have your audience, you can say whatever you want. You can do whatever you want, and your audience considers the source. They know when you're joking. They know when this is an idea that is just trying to push us further and we all find funny and we're all grown-ups about it. It's when you're attached to some corporation. If you have a show on NBC or if you're being hired by a company in a studio, then you're in trouble. And I've watched a lot of people get shows taken away, a lot of people you don't even hear about. You know, there's the big cancellation, but there's a whole nother level of people being canceled quietly who you don't even know and you don't hear, and because of one joke, they end up in trouble and have projects taken away. And it's pretty terrifying. The good thing about the moment, though, is that you don't need those corporations. So all these comedians, you notice, are starting their own podcasts, starting their own networks, writing their own material, going out and performing. If you're not beholden to a company that's frightened and hasn't figured out how to make an adult stand, and this is what we do, and they're just playing to the whims of a few people complaining, that's when you run into trouble. So all these comedians now, we have freedom to speak, but you have to do it on your own terms.
Yeah, and it seems to me then the test of whether you sink or swim is, are you funny? Which is what it should be.
100%, 100%. That's the greatest thing about comedy. If you're funny, you're unstoppable. You're unstoppable. And it doesn't matter what you are, where you come from. If you're funny, I've never seen one truly funny person show up in the clubs or in wherever we do it and not succeed. It's unstoppable. Will they get hired by SNL? Maybe not, but they'll be a great comedian and people will find them. And it's kind of interesting, like even like Chris Rock had his special come out. The people writing about his special were not comedy people. They were people who write about culture and people writing about his opinions and how does it fit in our woke society and all this kind of stuff. And it was embarrassing how little they understood about comedy itself. But comedy's become so big now, and in the absence of real adults in news, comedians are seen as like the grownups for some reason. But you can't write about comedy in those terms to fit your section of your culture that you have to write about all the time. That's not really what it's about, but it's kind of bled over.
Right, and well, it's because that's where most of us get our news now is from comedy, so
yeah, I
that's
know.
how it works. You know, you're a funny guy. You talk about how you need to have a sense of humor. I want to ask you about what it's like being a girl dad, because I have 2 daughters too. They so much prefer my husband and me. So hard to be a mom. What has being in a household, a female household, done for you as a man, given you a perspective on women and womanhood? Because it is different when you're living in all that estrogen.
Yeah, but I was raised with 2 younger sisters. It was me and 2 younger sisters. And so I was very aware of it at an early age. And I'll admit I used it as an advantage to get girlfriends when I was young because I could understand, I knew what was going on and how they were growing, and I was just more in tune. But then raising daughters, I wasn't sure what was going to pop up because you hear all these cliches of like when your daughter starts dating and how you mean to the guys and all of that. And I really consciously tried to just back off and just be there and just be supportive and just be around and let them know that I wasn't an opponent. And it really kind of worked out. And they're so much more impressive than I anticipated. And so different. Raising one was not the same as raising the other by any means. They have different, complete outlooks, but still both just so impressive. And they've completely lapped me. Like by the time they were juniors, I was just like, all right, I'm here to support you. And of course I give them advice and I'm still their dad. But it became real obvious that I was no longer the smartest one in the room.
Yeah, no, this generation is way, way, way smarter.
Yeah.
Way smarter.
Incredible.
Way cooler.
Incredible.
Because they have to be, I think. Because it's up to them to save the world,
yeah,
right?
they do have to save the world.
Because we're not going to do that. We've had a good run.
We gave it a shot.
We gave it a shot.
I stopped eating McDonald's in college.
You've done your part. Then there you go.
I did it.
There you go. Thank you.
We were the early recyclers.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
To the planet.
I mean, it didn't work, but...
And your wife's a vegetarian, so there's all that.
Yeah, the whole house is vegetarian.
Okay, so there, you're doing doing for the planet.
Thank you.
And Father's Day is coming upon us. I have to ask you, because I know you have said, I think it was you told Colbert, what dads really want for Father's Day is like nothing.
Yeah.
What do you want for Father's Day?
Nothing.
What do you think?
I just want them to be around. I just want them just be around. We don't even have to hang out. Just be around. I always yell, now that they're older, but I would always say Sunday's family day. And if anything was going on, if someone had something, I would, what do you mean? It's family day. Well, you can't go to your friend's house. All right, but it's family day. And I would, make a bigger thing of it than it really was. But I did mean it. There should be one day where you just kind of I just want to see your faces. That's all.
Right. Even if those faces even if there's a phone between us and the faces, I feel like that's something.
And now that you're saying it, my one daughter's going back to school. She has a job for the summer working at school, and she's not going to be there on Father's Day. So I guess that's ruined.
I'm sorry, I brought it up.
It's all right.
Aw, Tom.
It's okay.
Look, now
I'll get one of them.
I feel like I ruined your Father's Day. You know what? She ruined your Father's Day.
You don't really want anything, but you just want a little quiet acknowledgement.
Or just like a little hangout time. I want to ask you one more thing, because you bake bread. You said you could talk about bread all day long.
All day long.
I am a nervous baker. I am a nervous bread maker. But you said something so beautiful about like what the power of bread making is, and I feel like I can apply that to everything else in life. Mm-hmm. That it's
slow and forgiving. Yeah, there's no reason to be scared of it.
I would not be scared of anything slow and forgiving. What is
like
baking,
a manatee?
Right. Like, what has baking bread taught you about how to interact with the world?
It was really, it actually was when I was first learning to do it. When I first started writing the books, and it was a great pace for that, because I would be working, and then I'd have to go and fold the dough, and then I'd go back to working, and then I'd have to go fold it again. And it's about a 3-day process, and there's always something to be tended to. And it meant for me that I was home, that I was in my office, and that I was writing. So it became this very, it was just like a nice synergy between working and just kind of enjoying something. And then, once you fill the house up with smells of bread, but I'm not really a great baker for like precise pastry, that kind of thing. I'm a little too sloppy, and I feel like bread is somewhere between cooking and baking.
Forgiving.
Yeah, you can make mistakes. You can kind of correct it.
I like making mistakes, Tom.
Yeah.
It sounds right up my alley. You know what? I'm halfway there, because I make mistakes, so it'll be. It's easy.
It's a little sloppy.
I'm sloppy.
Yeah, it's a little. You can make mistakes.
I got this.
You can
I'm
totally
slow. I'm
do it.
sloppy, and I need forgiveness. So I think we're good to go.
Sounds like we should be friends.
100%, and then we can go and not judge people in the airport too much. It sounds perfect. Tom Papa, thank you so much for joining us today. The book, once again, is called "We're All in This Together." So make some room.
Yeah.
In the airport or anywhere else, right?
I put my book up on the display at the airport yesterday.
Yeah, you did.
It wasn't in there because it's only the bestsellers right off the bat. So I just put it up there. I'm
just
like,
give it a little nudge.
Yeah, that was my defense. It's like if they like, sir, what are you doing? I would be like, make some room.
Making some room. We're all in this together. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.